Even at 28, Raihan often found himself lost in thought, wondering if success demanded sacrificing kindness and empathy. The bustling city around him seemed alive with opportunities, yet Raihan felt a quiet emptiness growing within, unnoticed by anyone. Raihan believed that in the professional world, cunning and determination mattered more than empathy, and he silently vowed to rise above everyone. Raihan quickly learned that claiming credit for others' hard work gave him an edge, and he no longer felt guilty about stepping over his colleagues. Each congratulatory glance and polite applause reinforced the belief that cunning and ambition mattered more than kindness. He stayed late into the night, pushing his limits, believing that every sleepless hour was a stepping stone to success. Helping others or showing empathy felt like a waste of time, and Raihan convinced himself that only results mattered. Raihan didn't hesitate to point out mistakes in front of others, believing that showing dominance was key to respect. Deep inside, no one challenged him, and his ego quietly grew with every subdued apology and nod. Raihan's efforts and strategic thinking finally paid off, filling him with pride as the offer letter landed in his hands. He felt unstoppable, convinced that intelligence and cleverness could overcome any moral obligation or human decency. As he led his new team, Raihan felt invincible, forgetting the faces of those he had once disregarded. Each ignored plea or stumble only reinforced his belief that empathy was a weakness in the pursuit of success. Raihan basked in his new status, laughing and celebrating with peers who mirrored his ambition, oblivious to the silent struggles around him. Every toast and congratulatory word fed his ego, blinding him to the growing isolation in his circle. Even as the city lights glittered around him, Raihan felt a subtle unease creeping in, though he refused to acknowledge it. He shrugged it off, believing that ambition and cunning alone would carry him through any storm, unaware that life had already begun setting the stage for karma.
Raihan ignored the colleague's plea, believing their struggles were their own problem. He convinced himself that investing time in others' issues was a distraction from his ambitions, blind to the quiet resentment it sowed. He took all the credit for the project, dismissing the hard work of his team as unimportant. Each nod of approval from higher-ups further inflated his ego, while loyalty and effort quietly slipped away from his circle. He found amusement in others' mistakes, believing it was part of climbing the ladder of success. Little did he realize that every laugh planted seeds of distance and resentment that would quietly grow over time. Calls from his mother went unanswered as Raihan buried himself in work, believing family concerns were a distraction. Yet deep down, a small voice of guilt tried to pierce through the fortress of ambition he had built around himself. Even amid the bright city lights, Raihan felt a growing emptiness that his achievements couldn't fill. He tried to ignore it, attributing the unease to tiredness, unaware that life's balance was quietly aligning against him. Raihan barely looked up, brushing off his friend's concerns as irrelevant. He believed ambition required ruthless focus, unaware that his neglect would slowly erode the bonds of trust he had taken for granted. For the first time, Raihan encountered a problem he couldn't immediately control, and frustration flickered across his confident demeanor. It was subtle, almost ignorable, but life was beginning to test the path he had carved without care for others. He caught snippets of hushed conversations, realizing that his actions were not as invisible as he once thought. Unease crept in as the first hints of consequence began to surface, though he stubbornly dismissed them. Seeing someone he had dismissed succeed left Raihan unsettled, a prick of envy and regret quietly growing within him. For the first time, he began to sense that his past neglect and arrogance might have consequences he couldn't simply escape. Alone on the rooftop, Raihan finally felt the weight of his choices pressing down on him, a quiet reckoning he had long ignored. The victories he once celebrated now felt hollow, as karma quietly reminded him that neglecting empathy and kindness leaves a void that ambition alone cannot fill. Raihan stared at the sudden failure, realizing that his careful plans could unravel in an instant. Panic surged through him as he grasped that ignoring small details and people's contributions had left him vulnerable. He tried desperately to fix everything alone, working late into the night, realizing too late that teamwork and trust are irreplaceable. Each frantic action reminded him that success achieved by neglecting others can quickly slip through one's fingers. The manager's words cut deeper than Raihan expected, exposing the flaws in his arrogance and carelessness. It was the first time he truly felt the weight of accountability for those he had overlooked and dismissed. For the first time, Raihan felt the isolation he had unknowingly built through years of indifference. Colleagues who once followed his lead now avoided him, silently delivering the consequences of his earlier disregard. Rain poured as Raihan's frustration peaked, realizing that even the world outside reflected the turmoil he had created in his life. His accomplishments felt hollow as personal setbacks began to mirror the neglect he had shown others. Looking into the reflection, Raihan finally confronted the consequences of his ego and indifference. He realized that while he had gained wealth and status, he had lost the very connections and respect that truly mattered. Raihan attempted to make amends, offering apologies to those he had dismissed or hurt in the past. The reactions were mixed, some cautious, some indifferent, reminding him that trust once broken takes time and effort to rebuild. For the first time in years, Raihan extended genuine help without expectation, feeling a small but significant shift in his heart. It was a quiet lesson that true satisfaction comes not from ambition alone, but from acts of empathy and kindness. Raihan looked back on the years of ambition and neglect, understanding how each choice had shaped the reality before him. The victories once celebrated now seemed empty, while moments of empathy he ignored became the lessons he needed most. Raihan finally understood that karma doesn't rush, but it never misses, shaping life according to the choices we make. True success, he realized, is not measured by wealth or power alone, but by empathy, integrity, and the way we treat others along the way.